All right. So today I want to talk about hormones, specifically something called estrogenic signaling and how it affects weight loss. Don't worry if you've never heard of that term, I will be explaining it very shortly. But before anyone's blood pressure spikes, let me say this clearly right from the get-go. This is not about gender. It's certainly not about politics. It has nothing to do with identity. And I shouldn't even have to caveat this, but that is the world that we live in. So estrogen doesn't have to be a trigger word. All right, are we clear on that? Good, because this is about biology. It's about how the human body responds to signals. And it matters because people who are doing the right things, people who are eating less and eating better and sticking to a plan, sometimes they still feel like their body is fighting them. And this is exactly why we're discussing this topic today. And this is going to help explain why. So first, let me establish a very simple idea that's going to sort of anchor this whole talk. Your body does not respond to your intentions exclusively. It responds to signals. All right, so you get the idea? So intentions help everything. But we are speaking about actual signals because you've experienced this, many of you. You've been very motivated, and your body doesn't always care how motivated you are. It doesn't care how frustrated you are. It's a machine, right? It's not your golden retriever. And it cares about what hormones are dominant in its environment or in the environment it's operating in. And one of the strongest sets of signals when it comes to fat storage is estrogenic signaling. And what does that actually mean? Because when people hear the word estrogen, they think of hormone levels, like how much you actually have. But that's not the way to think about it. That's not the best way to think about it, because what matters more than that is signaling. Which hormonal messages are loudest? Just like in your family, right? The one who's getting hurt is often the one who's loudest. So estrogenic signaling simply means that estrogen-type messages are dominant at what we call the receptor level, right? So in plain English, it means that the body is getting messages that favor fat storage and that favor energy conservation and protection, rather than getting messages that favor fat burning and muscle preservation. These are the messages that we want to get through. And it happens in women and men because, believe it or not, men do have estrogen as well. And women have testosterone. Everybody has both. And so the issue is not having estrogen. The issue is when estrogenic signals are the dominant signals, when they outweigh the opposing signals that help with fat loss. And here's what you should remember. It's not about how much estrogen you have. It's about which signals are winning. Think of it as a race, right? It's about what gets there first or what gets there loudest and strongest. And let's talk a bit about why this is so relevant right now. And it's because of things that we've talked about before. Modern life pushes the body in a direction that favors estrogenic, stress-based signaling. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's not because you're a bad person. I keep telling you this over and over. It's not your character. Most of you. For some of you, it's definitely your character. But basically, it's because the environment is so different than it was even a few decades ago. And this is why you hear all this talk. You hear all these words that are out there. You know, plastics. Much like the, who was that character? I don't know, in The Graduate, when the character says to Benjamin Braddock, plastics, my boy. Right? That's the word. So plastics, for example, or other chemicals. And this is why we're hearing about all the chemicals in our environment, because ultimately they get into our bodies and they affect our hormone signaling in the direction of estrogenic and stress-based signaling. And chronic stress is a big one, because when stress is constant, cortisol stays elevated. And cortisol is a hormone, and it doesn't just make you feel anxious, it changes the way that other hormones behave. And remember, when we talk about stress, we're not just talking about emotional stress, though that would be enough. We're talking about physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress. And really, a functional definition of stress could be anything that causes cortisol to spike. Think of it like that, right? And again, it's a functional definition. In other words, it takes all the judgment away. We don't have to say, well, this is a stressor, this is not a stressor. It can be a relatively objective thing. And over time, when your cortisol is elevated, it's going to suppress testosterone. It's going to disrupt insulin signaling and push the body into that protective mode, right? And a protective mode is not the mode you want to be in to lose fat. When your body's in a self-protection kind of way, its priority is not burning fat. Its priority is keeping you alive. See, we have so much stress in today's world that it's not like when we were cavemen. And we could definitely distinguish a stressful situation from a non-stressful situation. Famously, scientists talk about, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And that was a definite stressor, and we knew about it. It was clear, okay, this is stress mode. But then we were very clear when we weren't being stressed out. And now that's not the case anymore. There's just too much going on. So protective mode means holding on to energy, storing fat, slowing things down. And sleep disruption does the same thing. Poor sleep lowers testosterone in men and in women. It worsens insulin sensitivity and increases hunger signals. So we're seeing this relationship here between cortisol that kind of gets everything started, right? It spikes, testosterone gets lower, insulin sensitivity gets lower. So it goes towards insulin resistance, right? And we know insulin resistance is a precondition for gaining and storing fat and for other problems in the body. And it increases hunger signals. So we tend to poo-poo sleep in our society, right? But even one bad week of sleep can shift the hormonal environment towards fat storage. Then we need to talk about diet. And when we talk about diet, it's not all about calories. We've been led to believe it's all about calories, but it's also about quality of food, and it's also about timing. So it bears repeating: ultra-processed food, constant snacking, leads to sugar spikes. And of course, sugar spikes distort insulin signaling. Every time you eat and especially sugar or foods that break down into sugar, insulin goes up. And this, by the way, is one of the reasons that we're better off eating on a schedule and not eating between meals. Because if you eat between meals, and you're eating your meals, then you have constant spiking of insulin. And if you're eating the right things, it tends to spike less, but still to some degree. So it bears repeating, when insulin signaling is off, fat loss becomes harder, even at lower calories. So again, we have to think more in terms of the hormones, because that's how your body thinks. And then there's the boring but important category of modern exposures, like I was mentioning before. Plastics, fragrances, environmental chemicals, many of which have effects like estrogen at the cellular level, at what we call the receptor level, right? The receptors are what allows things to get into the cells. And I'm not trying to scare you. You don't need to go down a rabbit hole. The point is in panic. The point is understanding and in choosing the right direction. Humans have been living for 200,000 years in a certain environment, and that environment has changed drastically in modern times. In the past, we can call it 100 years, but even within that, since the 1980s, it's changed drastically. So all of these things, the plastics and the different chemicals, they push the body to the same place. It's a hormonal environment, a bad hormonal environment, a bad hormonal neighborhood. You want to be in the good neighborhood. And that neighborhood favors storage over release. We want to be able to release fat. And here's the part that matters most for weight loss. When estrogenic signaling is the dominant signaling, several things tend to happen. So fat loss slows down. We've established that. The body will defend its fat stores more aggressively. This is why we do a detox. Because in the presence of toxins, the body wants to hold on to the fat. It will actually store the toxins in the fat stores. So your body's then incentivized to hold on to this fat. Muscle becomes harder to maintain. And muscle mass is directly related to metabolism. Energy drops, speaking of metabolism. And many of you will notice a drop in motivation. And, when you're unmotivated and you have no energy and you're tired and your insulin is spiking and then it's going down and you have all this shit going on, for some reason, people tend to introvert. They tend to say, what is wrong with me? You see, we assume the problem is always ourselves. And on the one hand, it's a good assumption because it makes us responsible. But on the other hand, it too easily turns into self-blame and thinking that you have to just grit your teeth and try harder when there is this technical explanation. Manage the hormone signaling. Nothing is wrong with you. Again, with most of you. Some of you will argue with me and tell me there is in fact something wrong with you. Okay, I will grant you that. There may be. But your body functions like a machine, right? It's affected by, of course, the emotional. It's affected by the spiritual. But, for the most part, it functions like a machine. And so we have to see what that machine needs. Does it need more oil? Does it need less oil? Does it need water? What does it need? Generally, your body is responding appropriately to the signals it's receiving. Think of it like that. Think instead of what's wrong, what's right. It's very often functioning correctly given the stimulus. And so this is why weight loss is not just about willpower. You need willpower to do the right things, especially in today's environment. But ultimately, it's about changing that hormonal environment, getting it back on your side. And this is also why people sometimes will lose weight very easily at first, and then they hit resistance. Because at first, the calorie reduction in and of itself usually works. Not always. I've seen people, resistant to that. Generally not so much on my program, but they'll come in here and they'll tell me how they don't eat a lot. And they're telling the truth. But as time goes on, the body adapts. If your stress goes up, your sleep drops, routine starts slipping, the hormonal environment shifts back, even if the calories stay low. And it's not failure, it's just how your body is functioning. That's just physiology. Now, I want to make something very clear because this is where people often go off the rails. Most people don't need things like hormone therapy. Most people don't need a lot of testing or clinics or pellets or injection. Do you know about the pellets? They put these like time-release pellets under your skin and they release hormones, usually I think testosterone. But most people just need better signaling. And the hormones will respond to behavior. They'll respond faster than most people realize. So getting back to the basics, we just saw the Super Bowl, many of us, yesterday. The fundamentals always matter. And getting back to the basics, sleep, one of the strongest hormones regulators we have. Don't poo-poo your sleep. Don't think you're macho. It's so funny. Because you take people, and even when they start to put on a little age, they're in their 50s and 60s, they still think they're as invulnerable as they were when they were kids. I mean, the things that we were able to do when we were younger, it was great, but it gave us a false sense of security. I mean, going out, dancing till dawn, and then going to work, some people did this kind of thing. Not everyone, but everyone has some version of that story, right? You were basically impregnable. It's like being Superman. And there is no kryptonite strong enough sometimes for a young person, but anything can be kryptonite once you start to get a bit older. And be aware, so you got to sleep. Protein intake protects metabolism, it protects muscle tone. So get adequate protein. And the thing is, it's consistency. And human beings struggle with consistency because it's easy to, kind of just do things based on force of will one time. You can make a heroic effort. If I told you not to eat today, okay, fine, you could do that. Right? But if I told you to cut out your favorite food for a year, that's a little different. Right? So it can be really hard to take consistent actions over a long period of time, but that is the key. Your body likes the predictability. It'll adapt to that. And when meals are consistent and sleep is consistent and routines are consistent, stress signaling will drop. Testosterone will recover. Insulin sensitivity improves. And the estrogenic dominance that we started out talking about, like one thing with hormones leads to other things, but that will also improve. And this is why structure matters so hard. First of all, having to think is another source of stress. So please don't think when you can just follow a structure. Turn off your minds, for God's sakes. Nothing will mess us up like our minds, like overthinking. When you have this structure, it removes the exhaustion of making decisions. Simple choices are one thing, but decisions get exhausting. We have to make too many every day. This is why people are starting to farm out their decisions to AI, right? This is what we have to look forward to. But that's a whole other story. All right, but structure will lower stress, and that will help stabilize signals. And that's not sexy, but it's effective. And now I'm going to say something that may sound counterintuitive. Motivation is not what gets you lean. We're so used to relying on motivation. And of course we need some. But this better environment that we're speaking about internally with our chemicals, specifically our hormones, that's what really does it. Right? The less of a stress state your body is in, the easier the fat loss becomes. And sometimes, I've seen this, when people push harder because they want results, they're so committed, it works against them. Right? More stress, more restriction, the body goes into more of a protective mode. I've got a great story about that. I had a gal who was on the program. I've told this story before, but she was on the program, and she was the kind of person, she was an attorney in New York City, a corporate lawyer, very driven. Her commute was like an hour and a half each way, so she would get up at 3:30 in the morning, go to the gym, work out, then commute to New York, where she had this tough job as a corporate lawyer, then commute back, and then do the same thing the next day. That was her life. So she was on the program, and she was doing surprisingly poorly. And then at one point during the program, she took a trip to Hawaii, and she said that she wanted to stay on the program. And lo and behold, while she was in Hawaii, the weight just started dropping off. And it was because she wasn't in that stress state. That was such a learning moment for me. And I've seen it with other people, but that's a great story. So sometimes the smartest move is not to do more or to do it harder. It's to do the same thing, but with greater peace of mind, more calmly. Okay, so let me leave you with just a few simple ideas that you could hold on to. All right, not things that you have to be obsessive about, but anchors. First, again, and I'm reiterating, sleep is not optional. Okay, it's endocrine regulation. If sleep is bad, your fat loss will fight you. I have stories about that too. Secondly, you want to do things that protect you. Do something that makes you calmer. Eat protein, as protein will protect your muscle tone and your metabolism and help with hormone balance. Third, be consistent. Consistency beats intensity. If you can do those things, then you should be okay over the long term. Your body would rather have boredom and predictability than, like I said, something heroic that you have to get yourself motivated and stressed about. And if you take nothing else from what I'm saying, then take this. Your body is not broken. It is listening and it is responding to the signals. And when you improve the signals, your body will respond often faster than you expect. And that is exactly why we focus on structure here. Structure will assist you in calming down and taking the right actions consistently. So that's our basic framework. If you have questions, we can absolutely talk through them. Get in touch with me. But other than that, the weather's going to start to get warmer very soon. Pitchers and catchers are reporting this week, and that is a sign that spring and life is upon us again, or will be very soon. There is reason for hope. Have a great week.